do you think that, I know it says, when you've looked into it, it leaves room for the expansion out west. But do you think that if they did expand out west and add 2 new teams and made it 16-16, that it might spread the talent pool a little thin in the NHL?
I don't think so, because there's a lot of great hockey players who aren't there yet, Worldwide, it's a great sport, and the fact that you can pull teams or guys from different countries that are very good hockey players, there's plenty of talent pool to go around. I don't think 2 more teams is really going to spread it that thin. The only thing I really think it'll do is it'll open up some bigger contracts for some of the higher-end players.
Well, I mean,
you might see some top lines, but with the way the sport's been going and the building and the way the training in the sport's been going, it's just like any other sport. Athletes have been improving, and there's a lot better players. You're seeing it now. There's teams where they didn't used to. Teams are running 3-4 lines deep with a lot of talent, and they still have plenty of talent in their AHL teams, and there's still kids they can pull from college.
Well, let me ask you then. I mean, there are teams in the NHL that are struggling revenue-wise. Do you think the best idea would be to add 2 more teams? I mean,
well,
hockey, especially in the South, is a little...
Here's the way I look at it. When I heard Barry Melrose mention something about expansion, on that other sports network that we don't mention. When he mentioned the expansion, the first thing that came to my head was, well, for a hockey fan, it's good. I want to see them expand, but on a business standpoint, is that really the best idea? And the answer is, if you go to the right city, it is, because then if you go to the right city, say, the first thing that popped in my mind was Quebec, but it looks like they're leaving room open in the West, so Quebec's not really the right answer, although I think it would be a great place. If you put teams in, Winnipeg is generating great revenue. When you put these teams in that are building more revenue, that profit sharing becomes between the higher margin teams and the lower margin teams more important. So the lower margin teams that are struggling to make revenue are going to be paid out more by the higher margin teams. Now, so what I did was I started to look into it when I heard that. It interested me. So back in 2009, the NHL, Players Association and the NHL both said that no team, they were not looking into expansion at all, and no team would be moving. And then the next year, Atlanta Thrashers moved to Winnipeg. So I was looking at it, and in 2007, and keep in mind where these cities are located, Kansas City, Las Vegas, Houston, and Seattle all presented proposals for NHL franchise.
Okay. Las Vegas will never get a sports franchise, though, and that's across the board in any sport, though, because no league wants a team. What you just said with the NHL having some programs that are having difficulties generating revenue. I could see the NHL being the first team to go to, the first professional organization to go to Las Vegas. How do you pass up that money when you're in a sport that because of the gambling aspect of it? Revenue? I'm just telling you that you'd have a better chance at any of the other cities you mentioned, in my opinion, than you would in Vegas.
Houston has had a successful NHL, or not NHL, but professional hockey team there. Plus, Texas has more professional hockey teams in it than any state or province. So there's a huge following in Texas. So Houston is definitely a possibility. There have been some Canadian cities that have been trying to, get in. Ontario would be one of them. It's something in Ontario you could see because it's more towards the central. They could possibly be a Western Conference team. So you could see one Canadian team, which is also a good move, and one American team coming into the Western Conference. But I think within the next 5 years, you're going to see a 2-team expansion.
Well, I mean, the one thing I could see with this, I mean, going back to you making the statement about Vegas, I do agree with Eric. I don't see it happening, but on the same aspect, I think as the NHL, I could see why they'd look into it just because of the fact that
because of the gambling, you cannot do it.
No, I'm not saying they can do it. I'm saying I could see why they could look into it for the simple fact that the NHL needs to do something to be different and bring in. They're still 4th, 5th behind. I mean, I don't even know. Maybe U.S. Soccer is competing with them for that 4th spot right now.
No,
it's just you're talking about this team. This league needs to do
U.S.
something
Soccer
to
is still competing with the WNBA as far as ratings
go.
Right.
But I just think it'd be an idea. I could see. I don't see it happening, but it'd definitely be something you look at just for like, well, let's be different. Let's do something nobody else has done.
I think the expansion especially if they go to the new conference realignment, is probably something that's inevitable. They're probably going to expand. I agree with Fife 100%. And I agree. I think Houston could be a good spot out west. Adding possibly another Canadian team because, let's face it, they love, love, love hockey up there in Canada. I could see something like that, too.
There's not a lot of options,
Yeah.
The problem with Canada is a lot of the options are east. Hamilton's been trying to get a team since 1980. Saskatoon, which is west, is a possibility, but that's up there in Canada.
The populations are too small.
In a professional sport.
Well, yeah, but that part of the reason that they never put a team in those cities too, and I mean they even kind of thought twice about putting a team in Winnipeg is because the cities are so small that they don't have a ton of people. If you put a professional team in a city that only has 100,000 people, it's hard to fill the arena every night.
And they have the good thing about this city is that they generate fans. There's not a lot to do there. Sometimes with hockey, believe it or not, like I played out in Dubuque, Iowa. There is nothing to do in Dubuque, Iowa. The stands were always full because there's nothing to do. You go to a hockey game. So it's one of those things where it's like the Oklahoma City Thunder. There's not a lot to do around there. But they all go to the basketball games, and it's like a college atmosphere. That's another city that was mentioned as a possible.
I could see like a Houston or an Oklahoma City getting a team, trying something new, especially in Oklahoma City because they seem to be like that rabid, almost college type fan base there. I could see Kansas City. I know you mentioned that before. I could definitely see some of those cities getting involved and definitely putting in bids to try and get a team there.
Another thing that was mentioned, but again, it's east, so I can't see it happening. But Toronto, they feel like they're leaving a lot in Toronto because there's a lot of revenue that's there. I know they have the Maple Leafs there, but that's kind of like Canada's tri-state area. It's very highly populated, and they feel like they could handle another NHL team there. But I just think it would be too difficult to get fans. There's just too many guys following teams already around there.
Yeah, but then maybe that's why they would go to Quebec.
Yeah, Quebec's in that jag. And I think if they were going to do any East teams, they would probably have kept Detroit in the West and just done a 15-15,
Yeah.
That way you split it and get 16-16. Yeah. I mean, one way or another, that's what I was figuring when you're like 16 and 14. I'm like, you got to figure they're thinking about adding more teams. There's no way you're just like, well, we have 30 teams.
Well, baseball had 16 and 14 for a lot of years. And it wasn't until this year that they finally moved the Astros to the AL, and now you have two 15-team, leagues. So it can happen, and maybe the NHL stays this way for a little while. But I think it is more likely, what Fife was saying, that they do try to expand and, grow a little.
Yeah, I mean, if you laid out a map and you put dots on the map as to where NHL teams are, and you looked out west, it's kind of spread thin. So a couple more teams out there, and, it's going to add a little more to it.